Take a deep breath and let yourself melt into stillness. The day is done now. You don't have to carry anything else. Not the buzzing thoughts, not the tension in your neck, not the invisible lists that swirl through your mind. They can all wait. Right now, you're safe. You're warm. You're still. Let your eyelids grow heavy as the hush of evening settles around you. You may hear the faint rustling of linen curtains, the soft hum of cicadas in the reeds, and the slow, lazy current of the Nile as it drifts beneath a crescent moon. That's where we are now, drifting, breathing, floating toward a distant, sunlit past. A time when the river was a god and every grain of sand whispered a name. Our story tonight sets sail in the soft golden glow of ancient Egypt, where shadows stretch long across temple walls, and even the wind knows how to stay quiet. You wake before dawn. The air is cool, surprisingly so, and your mat still carries the scent of yesterday's sweat and the faded trace of sweet myrrh from a neighbor's incense. You sit up slowly, careful not to wake your brother, and you press your palm against the packed dirt floor. The coolness seeps into your skin, anchoring you in a morning you already know by heart. You are not a noble, not a priest, not a scribe. You are something much more fragile than power. You are a record keeper in a royal granary, and your survival depends on your ability to count quietly, obey quickly, and never ever make a mistake. Outside, the horizon glows like burnt honey. You wrap yourself in your rough linen robe, the fabric coarse against your shoulder blades. It was your father's robe before you. It has been mended 12 times. You still recognize his stitching. The air smells of damp straw, goat skin, and a hint of barley flour. You pass sleeping dogs curled beneath baskets, and old women sweeping dust from doorways, even though the wind will only bring more. You hear a distant splash, someone drawing water from the canal, and beyond that, the quiet thump of papyrus sandals on stone. Always the sound of people moving, always before the sun. You reach the grain house just as the overseer arrives. He doesn't greet you. No one does, not formally. He smells of coriander and stale beer, and his breath fogs the morning air. He has the eyes of a man who never truly blinks. You bow your head. You always do. He unlocks the stone threshold, and the door groans like a camel's throat. Inside, the air is thick with dust and silence. You walk between the giant baskets, each taller than you, and begin your day. You count with your eyes first, then your fingers, then your heart. If your tally is wrong, someone starves, or someone's punished. Maybe you. The granary records are sacred, not in the way the temples are sacred, but in the way a knife is sacred, dangerous, misunderstood. You record the incoming shipments, sacks of wheat from the Nile Delta, jars of honey from Upper Egypt, tiny bags of dried lentils stamped with the seal of the vizier. Everything must be weighed, measured, whispered into papyrus scrolls with the ink your father taught you to mix. Soot, gum, water, and just a breath of patience. You dip your reed pen and scratch each symbol with quiet precision. Your fingers cramp, but you keep going. The scribes wear perfume. You wear dust. That's how the world works here. Outside, the sun rises fast. The granite walls of the storehouse sweat heat. You're not allowed to eat during record hours, but hunger comes anyway, curling in your stomach like a sleepy cobra. You let your thoughts drift just a little. You think about the Nile festival that's coming. There will be music and river boats lit by fire and young dancers with red paint on their cheeks. You won't go, but you'll hear it. You always do. By midday, the sun is sharp enough to slice through the grain bags. You sweat through your robe, your lips crack. You wish for more water, but the overseer's watching. He says waste is a sin, and water is for crops, not mouths. You've learned not to argue. You've learned not to speak unless spoken to. The last boy who corrected the tally was sent to quarry work. No one ever saw him again. At sunset, you're allowed to leave. You walk slow, careful not to trip over the donkey paths. You pass a woman selling fish dipped in salt and a boy carving gods into a river rock. You pass a beggar missing half his face and a noblewoman smelling of blue lotus, carried in a wooden litter by 4 sweating men. You keep your eyes down, always. Looking up is for those who can afford to be seen. At home, your mother boils lentils with onion and dried mint. She doesn't ask about your day. She never does. The next morning comes like a whisper. You do not need a rooster to wake you. You know the hour by the color of the sky behind your window soft, gray, melting into gold, the kind of light that makes even the flies too lazy to buzz. You rise with the slow stretch of someone who knows the cost of rushing. In this life there is no reward for speed, only for silence, for steadiness, for surviving one more dawn without drawing attention. Your hands already reach for the reed pen, and the cord of papyrus scrolls before your feet touch the ground. You unroll the last entry from yesterday and read it again, just to feel its stillness. You don't trust your own memory anymore. Not since that day you forgot a single symbol and wrote that one noble's name upside down. It took weeks before the overseer spoke to you again, and even now you sense he's just waiting for your next mistake. You walk to the granary with the same steps as always past, the same hissing cats, past the cracked mural of Osiris rising from the underworld, past the blind musician who plucks 3 strings and sings of a palace he's never seen. It's all the same, but something feels different. There are guards at the corner of the street today, 3 of them, carrying spears etched with lapis and ivory. That's rare, too rare. You keep your gaze low and your pace unchanged. When you reach the granary, you notice the seal on the door is broken. The wax stamp that marked yesterday's lock has been split, and a small pile of red dust clings to the stone. You freeze. Your stomach drops. This is the kind of thing you're not supposed to notice. Or if you do, you're not supposed to speak of it. But it's too late now. The overseer saw you looking. He beckons you closer, and his voice is low, quieter than usual. He says the vizier's men came late in the night, took something or someone. No one knows. The scrolls are still here, but 3 bags of barley are gone, and the guard's footprints are still fresh in the dirt floor. You don't ask questions, but in your chest, something clenches. Barley doesn't vanish unless a noble owes someone a favor, or unless someone's starving enough to steal. You begin your work anyway, pretending nothing happened. The ledgers must be exact. You weigh the baskets, mark the new arrival of lentils from the southern farms, and scrape dried worm husks from a jar of honey that's been stored too long. Everything is routine. Everything is practiced. But your pen shakes just enough to stain the papyrus, and you curse under your breath. The ink bleeds, so you start again. Later, the assistant scribe arrives, a boy younger than you. with thick wrists and a tongue too fast for his brain. He leans in and tells you that someone in the next district was caught selling temple wheat on the black road to Nubia. His voice drops to a whisper. They buried him up to his neck and let the sun do the rest. You nod like it doesn't shock you. You're not sure if it does. There is a kind of quiet horror that lives in every city in Egypt. It hums beneath the surface like crocodiles under lotus leaves calm until hungry. You return to your work. You think of numbers. You think of rations. You think of how many mistakes it would take before someone thinks you're the thief. 1, 2, you don't know. You don't want to find out. That evening, you do something reckless. You walk to the Temple of Thoth, not to pray, not to speak, just to watch. The scribes here wear robes of fine white linen and speak in measured tones that echo like reeds in wind. They hold scrolls longer than your arm and ink that smells of crushed blue flowers. You stand behind a column and pretend to sweep. You watch them copy spells and death rites scrolls that will be buried with nobles and kings to guide them into the next world. You wonder what it would feel like to write something meant to last forever. Back home, you say nothing. Your mother asks if you ate. You lie. She doesn't press. She knows that truth is expensive here. She pours a bowl of onion soup and tears a crust of old barley bread in half. You eat slowly, chewing as though the world might end if you don't savor this bite. In a way it already has. That night, as the wind, by the time dawn spills its first warmth onto the roof of your home, you're already awake. Not just awake alert, listening. Breathing as shallowly as you can while you test the silence around you. The dream still hangs in your chest like a weightless stone, not heavy, but persistent. You rise slowly, stretching your limbs like you're unfolding from burial linens, and the cold air makes you wince. Your mother is already gone, likely to the canal to wash clothes for the temple women who never remember her name. You prepare for the day in the same order you always do: robe, belt, sandals, scroll pouch. And yet today everything feels misaligned. Your sandals chafe. The belt won't sit flat. The robe sags uneven at the shoulder. You chalk it up to nerves. But something tells you this day will not go as the others have. At the grain store, the overseer is missing. This has never happened. Ever. You wait by the door, clutching your scroll pouch like a shield. The assistant arrives next, wide-eyed and sweating, even though the sun hasn't fully risen. He says nothing at first, just looks at you, then at the door. Then finally, a whisper. The overseer's been summoned to the palace. You nod slowly, but your stomach twists. A palace summons can mean reward or ruin, and the line between the two is made of sand. You begin your work in silence, trying not to let your thoughts cloud your hand. But as you dip your reed into the ink pot, it tips just slightly, and a black droplet lands on your record. You watch it bloom into a circle, soaking the papyrus in silence. It's small, but visible. And in this world, that's enough to be dangerous. The assistant leans over. Use vinegar, he murmurs. It'll lighten it. You do. But the stain only fades, doesn't disappear. You press harder with the pen to mask it, etching deeper than normal into the page. When you lift the reed, the word is sharp, almost angry in its precision. You stare at it for a long time. It's not what you meant to write, but it's what you've written. By midday, the heat is unbearable. The granary walls radiate like kill stones. and even the rats have gone quiet. You step outside for a moment, just to breathe. The air tastes like hot copper and dust. Across the road, a girl is selling water from a clay jar, each cup wrapped in fig leaf to keep it cool. You don't dare spend coin without permission, but you remember her face. She once gave you a date when your father died. That was 4 floods ago. She meets your eyes and lifts the jar, slightly wordless, kind. You shake your head, barely. A refusal. A thank you. A memory. When the sun begins its descent behind the temple spires, you return to finish the ledgers. But something has changed. The seal scroll, your master copy, is missing. Gone from the locked drawer where it always rests. You check again and again. Your throat goes dry. You ask the assistant. He shrugs, says maybe the overseer took it to the palace. You want to believe him. You really do. But part of you knows better. You go home late, later than you should. The streets are quiet, eerily so. The usual buzz of merchants and the soft murmur of evening prayers is missing, like someone pressed their thumb against the city's voice. You hurry past the shuttered stalls, past a shrine to Anubis, past a wall where someone has drawn a crude eye and a warning you don't understand. At home, your mother is waiting. She looks tired, older than this morning. She has folded a fresh tunic for you and laid a date cake by your sleeping mat. She doesn't ask about your day, but she places a clay bead in your palm, a tiny charm against evil spirits. You haven't carried one since you were a child. That night you don't sleep. You lie on your mat, staring at the ceiling reeds and listening to the dogs bark far down the river. Your heart keeps time with the wind. You think of the missing scroll, of the stain on the ledger, of the look in the assistant's eyes, and you wonder just for a moment if your name is already being spoken in places you can't reach. If someone in a palace room is unrolling your scroll and asking where the barley went. You press the clay bead to your chest, and still you do not sleep. The next morning, you wake before the sky has changed. The stars still linger, pale against the horizon, and everything around you feels pinned in place, like a painting that hasn't yet decided what to become. Your eyes are dry, your mouth sour with sleep you never truly found. Still, you rise, you smooth the mat. You touch the clay bead once for memory, once for luck. Then you go. The air is unusually still. Even the birds are slow to speak. As you walk to the granary, the silence follows you like a careful servant. You don't see the usual washerwomen by the canals. The boy who sells lotus flowers isn't by the temple gate. And when you pass the mural of Osiris, you notice that someone has redrawn the eyes during the night. They look downward now, watching something beneath the ground. At the granary, the assistant is already there, alone. He's sweeping, but not well, just moving dust from one corner to the next. You say nothing. He doesn't look up. Inside, the ledgers remain untouched, except for one, the main ledger. The one that holds all master tallies, trade records, and palace allotments. Its ribbon seal has been broken. You pick it up gently, heart knocking like a pestle in your ribs. There's an extra mark in the margin of yesterday's entry, a small, deliberate symbol, barely a curve, almost like a fish hook. It wasn't there when you left, you're sure of it. You look again, hoping you're wrong, but you aren't. The mark is there, and it means one thing. Someone is watching this scroll. You breathe slowly. You check the other entries, pretending to be casual, pretending to look for ink levels or spacing. You find another mark, same shape, next to a line you corrected yesterday. Your blood turns cold. The assistant finally speaks. "I wouldn't ask," he mutters, still not meeting your eyes. "But if I were you, I'd wear better sandals tomorrow, just in case someone sends for you." You don't respond. You can't. Your mouth is dried into stone. You nod once and return to your post, hands trembling too hard to write. You spend the rest of the day copying meaningless tallies just to keep moving. You don't care if they're accurate. You just need something to hold, something to anchor your fingers while your mind drifts like silt. By the time the sun begins to lower, your hands are cramping and your eyes blur. You haven't eaten. You don't feel hunger, just a hollow throb behind your ribs, like your breath is echoing too loudly. That evening, as you step into the street, a man in a priest's robe passes you. He's not from your district, you know that immediately. His robe is too clean, his hands too soft. He doesn't speak, but he looks directly at you. Not past you, not through you, at you. Like he already knows your name. You hurry home, heart pounding. You take alleys you don't usually walk, passing looms hung with drying papyrus, baskets of unbaked mud bricks, and a shrine tucked into a crack in the wall offering bowls, filled with dates and a single drop of goat's blood drying in the heat. You whisper a prayer you barely remember, one your grandmother taught you. The words feel old and cracked in your throat. When you reach your house, your mother is stirring a pot of lentils, but she's not humming. She always hums. Tonight her silence is louder than fire. She hands you a bowl without speaking. The lentils are watery, the bread is stale. You eat anyway. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters except tomorrow. You lie on your mat and watch the shadows. You imagine them crawling. You imagine them whispering your name into ears you cannot see. You think about the overseer, where he is, what he's saying. You think about the noble families who sign the tallies you keep. You think about the mistakes they make that must be hidden by someone like you. Before you drift off, you make a choice. You take the clay bead charm and tuck it beneath a floor stone near the mat. You leave it there. A part of you is saying goodbye. And then, finally, sleep takes you, not gently, but with the numbness of exhaustion. Your last thought before the dark comes fully is simple. I hope the sun rises quietly. The sun rises like it always does, sudden and absolute. There's no ceremony in it, just heat. The light slants through the shutters and lands directly on your eyelids, and for a moment you pretend you don't feel it. You pretend the morning is still a few breaths away, and maybe, just maybe, you're still dreaming. But the stiffness in your spine and the dryness in your mouth are far too real for sleep. So you sit up slowly, like you're climbing out of water. You don't dress in a rush. There's no point. You already know what the day holds. Or rather, you know what it might hold. That's the more dangerous thing, not certainty, but the aching tremble of possibility. Your robe is freshly washed, though you don't remember washing it. Your sandals are laid out neatly at the edge of the mat, their leather straps oiled, soft. That wasn't you. Your mother doesn't look at you as you pass her. She only says softly, "Keep your shoulders low today." The streets are already warm when you step out. The city has resumed its normal rhythm. The sweepers, the hawkers, the slow procession of ox carts along the river's edge. But even as the world moves, you feel set apart from it. Like walking through a play where every actor knows the lines but you. The girl selling water isn't there today. The blind musician is. He plucks the same 3 notes he always does, but now they sound like questions. When you reach the granary, 2 guards are standing outside. They aren't dressed like local watchmen. Their uniforms are embroidered with red thread, and they carry short spears shaped like lotus stalks. One of them gestures toward the door. "You," he says, "bring your records. You're coming with us." No ceremony, no explanation, just obedience. You step inside and gather your scroll pouch, your ink pot, your spare reed pens. Your hands don't shake as badly as you thought they might. The assistant is nowhere to be seen. You wonder if he was the one who sent them, or if he's running even now. The walk is longer than expected, past the grain district, past the Temple of Thoth, past even the fishmonger's quarters where the streets smell of brine and eel blood. Eventually, you reach the outer wall of the Palace of Administration, a low but sprawling complex of sandstone, shaded by palm trees and guarded by jackal statues that seem far too lifelike under the heat. Inside, the world shifts. Everything is quiet, too quiet. Sand has been swept from the floor, leaving only smooth stone. The walls are painted with gold-leafed glyphs that shimmer in the light of oil lamps. Here, even the air feels heavier, like every breath you take must be borrowed. You're led down a narrow corridor, then through a heavy linen curtain into a room that smells faintly of cinnamon and old papyrus. At the far end sits a man wearing a leopard skin Sasha Royal clerk, one of the highest scribes in the land. His fingers are stained with ink, but his robe is spotless. His eyes are calm, but calculating. He does not speak at first. He simply motions to a reed mat across from him. You sit, you wait, you count 3 heartbeats, then 10, then 20. Finally, he speaks. "There are inconsistencies in the temple wheat records," he says. His voice is soft, like something dragged across silk. "Your name appears in the ledgers that track those shipments." "Explain." You open your mouth. Nothing comes out. He raises one eyebrow just slightly. You begin, slowly. You explain the seal that had been broken, the missing scroll, the red mark. You try to keep your tone neutral, not desperate, not afraid. You don't mention the assistant. You don't know if that's betrayal or survival, maybe both. The scribe listens. He does not interrupt. He writes nothing down. When you finish, he leans back. For a moment, he simply watches you. Then he speaks again. "You will remain here today," he says. "You are not under arrest, but you are under review." 2 guards step forward. One places a hand on your shoulder. Not rough, but firm. You are taken to a small stone room with no windows. A low bench. A jug of water. No ink. No reed. No papyrus. Just air and time. You sit and you wait. Outside, the sun rises higher. Inside, the shadows stretch long. You do not know how many hours pass. You count them by the ringing of distant bells, by the changing weight of heat in the air. Once a servant brings a bowl of lentils. You eat slowly. You do not speak. Eventually the door opens, but it is not the scribe who enters. It is the assistant. He looks exhausted. His robe is torn. His eyes are rimmed in red, and in his hand he carries a sealed scroll. The assistant doesn't speak right away. He stands in the doorway, cradling the scroll like it might shatter if he breathes too hard. His lips are pale. His eyes dart once toward the guards outside the door, then back to you. For a moment, the tension between you both is like thread pulled too tight. He crosses the room slowly, then kneels to your level, placing the scroll down gently between you. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," he whispers, his voice frayed with exhaustion. "I only meant to shift the numbers just once, just to help my uncle's farm pass inspection. He'd lost his fields last flood. I didn't think anyone would notice." He looks up at you then, and for the first time, you see what guilt looks like in human form. Not sharp or loud, but tired, quiet, hollowed. You don't answer. There is nothing to say. You've suspected for days, maybe longer, but hearing it out loud feels like stepping into cold river water. You knew it would be cold, but not this cold. He pushes the scroll forward. "This is the original tally," he says. "Before I touched it, the one you copied correctly. I found it stuffed behind the grain baskets. I'm giving it to the clerk." His hand trembles. "I'll tell them it was me." You stare at him. There's a strange stillness in your chest. Not relief. Not fear, just stillness. He stands, straightens his robe, and walks out the door. You sit for a long time. The water jug beside you is nearly empty. Your fingers trace the lines of the stone bench beneath you, memorizing the texture, the grooves, the ancient carvings scratched there by hands long before yours. One of them is a bird with its wings folded. Another is just a name too faded to read. Eventually the door opens again. The royal scribe returns. This time his expression is unreadable. He carries the scroll, your scroll, unsealed now. He reads from it silently, lips moving just barely. Then he sets it down. "You have done your duty," he says. "You will not be punished, but you will be watched." He rises. That's all. Nothing more. Nothing less. You are escorted back to the granary in silence. The sun is already low, casting everything in long golden light that makes the dust look like it's glowing. The marketplace is still open. The blind musician plays his same 3 notes. The mural of Osiris still watches the street. And the girl with the water jar is back. She sees you, lifts the cup, and this time you nod. You take the water. It's warm, slightly sweet, and the fig leaf smells like summer. You drink it slowly. That night, your mother is waiting with stew and a folded cloth. She doesn't ask what happened. She just pulls out your reed pen and begins sharpening it with a stone. When you sit beside her, she says quietly, "You're still here. That's enough." You nod. You eat. You sleep. And in the night, your dream is different. You're standing on the banks of the Nile, scroll in one hand, pen in the other. But instead of ink, your pen draws water from the river. And instead of words, you write ripples into the sand. The overseer is gone. The assistant is a bird flying low. And the palace burns quietly in the distance, but no one screams. It's just light and silence. When you wake, the mat is cool beneath you. The sky outside is still dark, and for once your hands are steady. The next day you return to the granary. The assistant is gone. No one mentions him. Days pass, then a week, then two. The rhythm of your life returns, not unchanged, but quieter, smoother. The ledger is lighter, without the assistant's handwriting curling in its margins. The ink flows more evenly in your reed pen. Even the overseer, who has returned from the palace pale-faced and silent, now keeps more to himself. You don't ask what he saw. You never will. Your days fall into a familiar pattern once more. Weighing sacks of barley, recording shipments of fish oil jars, tallying the temple rations for bread and onions. You speak only when necessary, and your quietness is mistaken for competence. Perhaps it is. Perhaps that is how people rise here, not by being louder, but by surviving when others vanish. The city continues its slow breathing. You notice things now that you never did before, like how the noble scribes walk in twos, always in step, their scrolls tied in red cords that mark them as untouchable, or how the guards near the palace never blink when they stand still for too long, like their eyes are part of their armor, or how your own sandals have worn thinner in the soles, the leather soft from 1,000 silent journeys. One morning, as you open the granary door, you find a new assistant waiting by the threshold. She is tall, older than you by a handful of seasons, and her eyes are not curious, they are cautious. That tells you everything. She's been sent, not hired, sent, which means the palace still remembers you. She says little, just asks where to find the wax tablets and where to record the flower shipments. You show her and she nods once. Her penmanship is clean. Her sandals are new. You begin to work beside her in silence. At first, it feels like learning to breathe again near someone else. You don't trust her, not yet. Maybe not ever. But her silence is sincere. She never asks what happened to the boy before her. She never speaks of rumors. And when she makes her first mistake, writing the wrong date on a fish delivery, you see her correct it with such precision, such quiet control that you feel a strange flicker of respect. In the evenings, you begin taking a longer route home, past the lotus fields, past a tiny shrine to Taurit, goddess of protection. You leave her a sprig of mint once, tucked between two smooth stones. The next day, it's gone. You don't know who took it. Maybe a priest, maybe a jackal, maybe the wind. And still, life continues. A scroll arrives from the palace 1 week later. It bears no seal, just a name written in fine script. Yours. You open it slowly. Inside is a summons, not for punishment, not for review, but for instruction. The Palace School of Scribes has reviewed your records. They have noted your attention to detail, your steadiness under pressure, your silence. You are being offered a place as a copyist within the House of Life, the sacred archive where temple records, royal decrees, and ancient rituals are preserved for eternity. You read it again, then once more. Your fingers tremble, not with fear this time, but with something deeper. A fragile joy, wrapped in disbelief. The House of Life, a place you thought you'd only hear about in passing. A place where the ink flows like prayer, and every symbol is a footprint left on time. You say nothing for the rest of the day. That night your mother weeps, not loudly, not with grief, just quiet tears that fall into the folds of your robe as she holds it tighter around your shoulders. Your father would have known, she whispers. He would have said your hands were meant for more than counting grain. You nod. You let her hold you. And before you sleep, you go outside and dig up the clay bead beneath the stone floor. You hold it in your palm. You do not need it now, but you keep it anyway, just in case. The day you leave the granary behind, the sun is soft for once. Not gentle, not forgiving, but quieter than usual, like even it understands that something sacred is changing. You rise early, though you don't need to. Your fingers move without thought, folding your old robe, tying your scroll pouch, tucking a sliver of dried fig into the edge of your satchel for later. You stare at the doorway before stepping through it, as if walking through it this time will pull your old life from your shoulders like a shedding skin. The road to the house of life passes through the temple district, and for the first time, you don't take the side alleys. You walk the main road where statues of gods line the way in tall silence. You nod to them, not out of superstition, but gratitude. There's something about stone that listens better than men ever do. The house of life is larger than you imagined. Not grand, no gold or peacock feathers or perfumed fountains. Just wide halls of sun-bleached stone, scroll niches carved into every wall, and the faint smell of ink, old ash, and dried flowers. It is alive in the way that only quiet places can be. And when you enter, no one claps or welcomes you. A single-robed scribe looks up from his scroll, hands you a clean reed pen, and gestures to a row of empty mats. That's all. No ceremony. Just the beginning. You take your place. You inhale the scent of linen and reed pulp. You begin to copy. The work is exact, sacred. Every line of text is part of something older than memory. You copy spells for safe passage into the afterlife. Decrees about flood taxes. Stories of gods who became stars. You learn to mix new inks, some from berries, some from fire-blackened resin, others from crushed beetles. Your fingers stain darker each day. You stop trying to clean them. The other scribes speak little, but not coldly. There is simply nothing to prove here, only to preserve. They nod at you sometimes. One leaves you a fig wrapped in lotus leaf beside your mat. Another places a scroll of riddles in your lap during rest hour, each one more confusing than the last. You never solve them. That doesn't matter. The laughter they bring is the point. In time, you learn the rhythm of this place. Ink at sunrise, stillness at midday, whispers at dusk when the air cools and the papyrus becomes brittle and sacred. You learn that some scrolls are not for copying, only for guarding. These are kept in the inner chamber, behind a curtain of woven reeds and gold thread. Only the high scribes may touch them. One day you are called to sweep that room. You bow as you enter, broom in hand, and your eyes scan the scrolls without reading. That's the rule. But your heart stutters when you see your name etched in the margin of a ledger you once wrote, tucked beside a royal decree about river grain flows. Your fingers itch to touch it. You don't, but you smile. That night you return home late. Your mother is asleep, her hands curled beneath her cheek like a child's. You place a single lotus petal beside her bowl. She'll know what it means. You sit outside beneath the stars. The river wind is cool against your cheeks, and you feel older than you are. Not in a tired way, in a sacred way. You think about how you almost disappeared that quiet week in the palace room with no window. You think about the assistant. You wonder where he is now. if he ever drank water from the girl with the fig cups, if he still dreams of the sound of scrolls unrolling, you hold the clay bead in your palm. It's warm now, from your hand, or maybe from something deeper. You don't need it, but you press it to your chest just once before you sleep, just in case. The mornings grow longer in the house of life, and time, for the first time in your life, begins to feel soft, not heavy, not hurried, just soft like the corners of well-worn papyrus, like the hush between temple bells. You now wake without dread. You wash without urgency. You walk with purpose, but without fear. There's a kind of invisible music to it all, and you've learned to move in time with it. Each morning begins the same. The long walk through the temple district, past the sunlit obelisks and the water sellers who now nod at you like you belong. You do not wear the badge of a noble or the scent of a priest, but you carry something better, the dust of knowledge on your fingers and the steadiness of someone who survived silence without breaking. At the House of Life, you are assigned your first permanent scroll series, a copy of the Book of Breaths, an ancient funerary text used to guide nobles through the Egyptian underworld. It is not just a set of spells, it is a journey in ink, a whispered map for those who walk the path beyond breath. Your task is to copy it faithfully, symbol by symbol, line by line, each mark placed with reverence. You will work on it for 40 days. Each day, you recite the first line before dipping your reed. I am the one who walks with stars on his shoulders and silence in his feet. The ink you use for this scroll is different. It's made with crushed lapis and honey resin, giving it a dark blue shimmer that catches the morning sun. It stains your fingertips in a way you can't quite wash off. You don't mind. It feels like a mark of belonging. You begin to notice how even the scribe's silences speak. A raised eyebrow is agreement. A pause before answering means wait and listen again. A scroll turned face down means this knowledge is not for you yet. You grow used to these quiet conversations. You learn, too, about the small rituals they keep. Every 7th day, they burn dry juniper near the scroll vaults to ward off mold and spirits. Every 10th day, they light a black candle before copying royal names to remind themselves that even kings return to dust. And once a month, before the full moon, they gather in the rooftop courtyard to tell old stories, not loudly, not like a feast, but in soft voices under the stars, so even the dead might listen. You are invited once. You bring dates and sweet beer, and you sit in the circle like you've always belonged there. One of the older scribes tells a story about a scroll so powerful that reading it backwards could summon the voice of the first god. Another scribe laughs and says he once copied a text so cursed it made all his ink pots crack for a month. They don't tell you which are true. That's part of the ritual. You do not speak that night, but you listen. And the listening is enough. Back home, your mother begins to sleep more deeply. She smiles more. Her hands shake less when she stirs the lentils. She started weaving again. She hums again. One evening, she shows you a strip of cloth with your name stitched into it, your true name, the one you stopped using when you began working in the grain store. She says, I thought maybe you'd forgotten. I hadn't. You take the cloth and tuck it inside your scroll pouch, between your reed pens and the old, dried flower petal you still carry. You have not forgotten. But it's good to be reminded. One day, a scroll arrives with a red ribbon. It's from the palace, not a summons this time, but a request. A visiting scribe from the southern district has brought a copy of a Nubian trade treaty, and they wish for you to help duplicate it for the temple archives. Your name had been given by your overseer. Not the one at the palace, the one from the grain store. The same man who never smiled, who once made you cry from a single look. He remembered you, and he had spoken your name in a room that mattered. You prepare your ink more carefully that day. You use your best pen. You lay out a fresh mat and burn a sliver of sandalwood beside your workspace. When the treaty arrives, you unroll it slowly. It's written in a blend of formal Egyptian and faint Nubian syllabary strange rhythms, but beautiful ones. You work for hours, head bent, heart steady. When you finish the last symbol, your hand aches. Your back is stiff, but your copy is flawless. You know it before anyone says so. You place your seal in the corner and bow before the finished scroll. That night, as you leave the temple district, the wind is warm. The moon hangs low and red. You stop by the small shrine to tour it once more, the one where you left the mint sprig weeks ago. You leave something else this time, the clay bead, not because you need it anymore, but because someone else might. In the weeks that follow, you grow into your silence like a second skin. There is a comfort in the repetition now. Each morning the same, you arrive, bow slightly at the entryway of the house of life, set down your satchel, and begin your first breath of ink. He carries a scroll sealed with black wax rare, reserved for funerary documents or divine messages. He speaks softly, and only in the old tongue, the kind used in temple rites. A blessing, or maybe just thanks. You're not sure, but you place the seeds in your scroll pouch anyway. He bows deeply, unexpectedly, and takes the scroll without a word. When he leaves, you realize your hand is still trembling. How his ashes were wrapped in linen and placed beneath a fig tree. She doesn't ask about your work, but she looks at your ink-stained hands and says, "Your fingers look like a god dipped them in the sky." You laugh gently and pull out the lotus seeds. You hand her one. She cups it in both palms like it's still blooming. How the mourners drank sour wine and told stories that made everyone cry and laugh at once. You feel your heart beat slow. The room disappears. You forget the heat, the sound of flies, the weight of watching. You remember the way your mother's hands stayed folded the entire time still, like stone, but her thumb pressed against your wrist the whole ceremony, gently tapping as if saying, "I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here." Not from fear, from awe. You wonder where the scroll will go. What hand will hold it next? Whether it will lie in the tomb beside the noble woman's wrapped body or be tucked into a wall to watch over her soul in silence. It's the first time you've ever been asked. You feel eyes on you, not unkind, but curious. He lays out an old, cracked scroll one, so faded you can barely read it, and asks you to copy it for preservation. In its place, someone has left a pebble painted with ochre and a single line. "I remembered." "Don't match the ink," he says. "Match the breath." You've come to collect small meanings now, like pebbles in the hem of a robe. You don't understand every word, but the tone is unmistakable. Reverence. He requests a duplication of a burial map 1, meant for a noble woman whose tomb will soon be sealed forever. He shows you a faded sketch drawn in red ochre and ash paths winding through the duet. The underworld, each bend marked by creatures that must be named to be passed. The Book of Breaths continues to unfold under your hands, its sacred geometry settling onto papyrus like a song only your fingers can hear. One afternoon, while preparing a new batch of ink, you were asked to assist a visiting priest. It says, "You ask no questions, you simply begin." And I remember who I was before I was afraid. The priest watches you copy for some time, then eventually steps away, leaving behind a small pouch of dates and 2 lotus seeds wrapped in cloth. The river is full of drifting lamps from a nearby festival, tiny fires carried on reeds, sent out to honor the departed. You watch them glide toward the horizon like constellations set loose from the sky. The tomb map takes 3 days. When you finish, the priest returns. That night you walk slower on your way home. The sky is bruised with indigo and rose. You remember your father's funeral. When you get home, she's waiting as always. The next day, an elder scribe invites you to sit beside him during the midday lesson. You don't ask what that means, but as you begin to write, you understand. You breathe with each symbol. You let the curve of each bird, each eye, each sacred reed move through you like a slow tide. And when you finish, he nods once. No praise, no correction, just a single word, good. Later that evening, you visit the old shrine again, the one where you left the bead. It's gone now. You don't know who left it. You don't need to. That night, you write your own words on a shard of pottery and hide it beneath your mat like you did all those months ago. I am still here, then you sleep, and the wind moves softly through the reeds. You begin to notice something new in your routine, not change exactly, but recognition. When you pass the temple gate each morning, one of the gatekeepers nods first. When you enter the house of life, the elder scribes no longer look past you. They look to you. You are not the newest pair of hands anymore. Another apprentice arrives younger than you were, uncertain in his steps and hesitant in his ink lines. You remember being him. You remember not knowing where to set your tools or when it was okay to ask a question. So you say nothing, but you place a fresh reed pen beside his mat when he's not looking. He finds it the next morning and says nothing either, but the tip of his head toward you is enough. A new kind of quiet gratitude. You continue copying the Book of Breaths, and in time you finish the entire volume. Each spell, each invocation, each sacred name. You bind the scroll with care and present it to the high scribe without ceremony. He turns each section in silence, and when he reaches the final line, he nods once. "It will be burned with the body of the priestess," he says simply. "You have written her path home." That night, as you bathe your ink-stained fingers in the Nile, you wonder what it means to give someone a map to death. Not to warn them, but to guide them. To write a story you'll never see the end of, but one that might be walked by a soul in another world. You cup the water and pour it slowly through your fingers. It catches the moonlight. It carries nothing. It carries everything. Days stretch onward. The scrolls shift from funerary texts to court documents, grain taxes, water distribution charts, temple supply lists. These feel colder, but no less precise. There's a comfort in them, too, in their steadiness, their logic. The work you once feared in the granary now comes back to you like an old song. You write of wheat, but with a pen trained in reverence. One day you're asked to help translate a recovered scroll from the ruins near the Red Hills badly damaged, brittle with age. It contains fragments of a poem older than any you've read. The words don't form full thoughts anymore, but what remains is hauntingly soft. Dot, dot, she drank the sun and wept salt into figs, her voice a wind between stars. You copy it carefully, not to preserve clarity, but to preserve feeling. Some scrolls are not meant to be understood fully, only felt. You think of your mother as you write, of the way she hums while she weaves, of how she never needed the temple's blessing to be sacred. And then, in the quietest part of the day, just after the midday rest, when even the scribes seem like statues, you are summoned. Not to the overseer, not to the high scribe, to the temple library. You've never been inside. It's spoken of in half whispers, a place where only the most trusted scribes are allowed to handle the sacred scroll's texts, bound in gold-threaded linen, written in handwritings so old, even the gods have forgotten their names. You're escorted by a priestess who speaks only in gestures. Her hands are pale with ash. Her robe smells of rose oil and desert wind. Inside the library, the air feels different, heavier, but not oppressive, like entering a room that knows how to keep secrets. You are given a seat, then a scroll, not to copy, not to read aloud, to restore. It's a fragment of an astrological guide used for royal births. The symbols are faint, flaking, nearly erased by time and breath and candle heat. Your task is to redraw them, one by one. No mistakes, no changes. You trace each glyph with trembling care, using a fine brush instead of a pen, dipping into diluted pigment mixed just that morning by a silent boy with blue-stained wrists. You forget the world as you work. When you finish, the scroll is taken from your hands without a word. The priestess bows, not deeply, not casually, but meaningfully. You are led out, back into the heat, back into the world. And as you walk home that night, the city feels both larger and smaller, like you've stepped through a curtain no one else can see, like you carry something now, not in your satchel, not in your hands, but in your knowing. Your mother is asleep when you arrive. A bowl of lentils sits waiting, a fresh fig beside it. You sit down, eat slowly, then look to the ceiling of your home. You trace the stars with your eyes. You think of the scroll, of the noble woman who will walk the duet with your handwriting in her grasp, of the poem about drinking sunlight, of the boy who found the reed pen on his mat, of the clay bead you no longer carry, and you whisper almost too softly to hear, I am still here. The weeks begin to pass, like the river slow, constant, weaving memory and repetition together into something that feels like peace. You now sit closer to the front of the scribe chamber. Your mat has been replaced with a newer one. Your tools are no longer borrowed, but yours. Your pen case has your mark etched in it, a small shape resembling a seated ibis, not unlike the god Thoth himself. The high scribe approved it, said it was time. Your hands have changed too. Once thin and cautious, they are now steady and calloused, stained in a way that no river water can wash away. You no longer glance at your fingers and think of toil. You think of ink, of permanence, of lines that might outlive even the most golden tunes. There are days now when visiting officials from other districts request you by name. They don't always meet your eyes, but they know your seal. They know your hand. And more than once, you've seen a familiar noble at the market glance down at a scroll and pause as though recognizing something. Not you, but your ink. That's enough. Your mother smiles more. She still says little, but her hands move faster when she weaves. She's been commissioned to craft linen wrappings for a temple offering this month a sign of honor. You don't tell her, but you asked a priest to request her by name. When the cloth was delivered, you watched her fingers touch the seal, then rest silently on the edge of the basket, as if unsure whether to believe the world was finally softening around her. At the House of Life, the younger scribes now ask you questions. Sometimes they wait until after hours, when the overseer's gone and the last flame is flickering low. They ask which reeds split less in dry seasons, or how to keep their hands from shaking when copying a royal title. You always answer simply, quietly. You never make it sound like a gift, but they nod with a kind of gratefulness you recognize from another life. And sometimes in the deepest part of the day, when everything feels still enough to breathe without noise, you think back to that first week when you stood shaking with a scroll in your hands, accused of a crime you hadn't committed, waiting in a silent room that smelled like wet limestone and fear. You think of the assistant's face, his confession, the way he handed over your future with hands still full of guilt. You wonder where he is now, whether he's working in some quarry near the Red Desert, whether he's alive, whether he dreams. One evening, as the sun lowers past the rooftops and the first stars begin to peek above the palm groves, a runner arrives at the scribe hall, dusty and breathless. He carries a scroll wrapped in blue cloth, another rare thing. The blue means urgency, secrecy, sacredness. The message is brief. A burial scroll has been stolen from the temple of Sekhmet during a festival. They need a replica made immediately by dawn so the funeral can proceed with the proper rites. If the scroll isn't replaced, the deceased noblewoman's soul may be lost in the afterlife, unable to find its way through the gates of fire and shadow. You are the one chosen to make the copy. No one speaks the reason out loud, but they know. And you know, because the high scribe says only this, you've walked the breath lines before. You begin the work at once. The stolen scroll is older, brittle at the edges, creased with age and mourning. You're careful not to breathe too hard near it. Its symbols are heavier carved with firmer strokes, written in a dialect not often used now. You light a single candle. You steady your breath, and you begin. You copy each passage with the same reverence you once reserved only for prayers. Each name, each title, each symbol of power and protection meticulously honored. You whisper the words in your mind as you write them. Open the mouth of the dead. Protect the heart from devourers. Guard the path with the head of the jackal. Outside, the night grows deeper. Inside, the ink runs clean and sure. You finish the last line just before the morning birds begin to sing. You seal the scroll, press your symbol into the wax, and hand it to the runner, who bows low, says nothing, and disappears into the pale light of dawn. You sit back. You don't move for a while. Then, finally, you let your head rest on your arms. And for the first time in many nights, you sleep at your writing mat, and you dream of a river that flows not with water, but with words. When you wake, the scroll mat is warm beneath your cheek, and your hand still curls as if holding a pen. The candle burned down to its base sometime during the night, leaving a small pool of wax like a silent exhale beside your notes. The sun is barely above the rooftops, casting long, pale beams across the chamber floor. You sit up slowly, spine stiff, the rhythm of your breath oddly quiet, like even your lungs are still savoring the dream. Someone has placed a fresh cup of fig tea near your mat. You don't see who, but you offer a soft nod toward the others in the hall as you lift it. The taste is sweet and earthy, grounding. As you sip, the high scribe approaches, not with haste, but with presence. He kneels beside you and sets a clay shard on the ground between you. It's inscribed with just one symbol, the Eye of Horus, lined in gold ink. You recognize it instantly. It is a symbol of healing, of watching, of having been seen and not forgotten. The funeral was completed, the scribe says softly. The noble woman's soul passed safely. The family offers blessing. You bow deeply, forehead brushing the mat, not out of duty, but gratitude. You spend the rest of the morning tending the ink pots, helping the younger scribes wash their brushes and prepare papyrus for the next week's records. The sun outside grows brighter, but the hall remains cool and dark, the air always scented with dust, resin, and memory. Later, as the afternoon heat ripples over the courtyard, you walk beneath the colonnades to the garden beside the temple wall. It is a place of stillness, used more for breath than for words. Palm trees sway gently overhead, their leaves rustling like parchment. Birds dart between flowering vines, their calls short and musical. You sit beneath a fig tree and think of your father again. You remember how he used to run his fingers over the cracks in the stone bricks at home, saying, "Even the earth keeps stories. We just need to learn how to read the broken parts." You look now at the stones around you, each one worn smooth by hundreds of sandals before yours, each one holding silence in its own way. That evening, as the shadows lengthen, a visiting official arrives with a new commission, the creation of a calendar scroll, a sacred duty reserved for scribes trusted to record not just time, but how it flows. The calendar will determine holy days for a district to the south, festivals, offerings, planting cycles. It is not just ink, it is order inscribed. You are selected to write it. You are given 7 days, and you are told what you write will become what they believe. The scroll is long, nearly the length of your sleeping mat. It arrives blank, the linen pressed and bleached under the sun for 10 days before being delivered. You run your hand across it and feel its weight, its pulse, like a heart before it starts beating. Each day you mark time with sacred precision. Sun cycles, star risings, flood seasons. You draw tiny circles for each moon, draw lines through time to divide it by light and grain. You mark days for prayer, days for mourning, days for fire rituals and spring planting. The ink you use is crimson and black. The crimson for power, the black for eternity. As you work, you begin to notice something strange. Your own birthday, if counted by modern moons, would fall on the festival of Bastet, goddess of protection and music. You never knew that. But when you read it on the scroll, something clicks. A hidden note, a soft laugh from the gods, maybe. You smile. You finish the scroll. And when the official collects it, he says there are scribes who copy and scribes who guide. You may not know which you are yet, but the scroll does. You think about that for a long time. That night, your mother braids your hair for the first time since you were a child. She doesn't speak, but her fingers are sure. moving like they remember a version of you that you almost forgot existed. When she's done, she places a strip of soft cloth over your shoulders newly dyed, still holding the scent of saffron. You sleep well that night. You dream again. But this time you are not in a scroll hole or by the Nile or beside the book of breaths. You are walking across a golden field and the wind is singing a name you don't recognize. But somehow you know it's yours. When you wake, the golden field from your dream is still behind your eyes. You carry its silence with you as you rise, as you wash, as you wrap your linen robe and tie the satchel at your side. The wind outside your home feels cooler today, brushing softly over your skin as if it too has traveled far overnight. You pause before leaving and glance back at your mother, still sleeping, her face lit with the hush of early light. You place a fig near her hand and step into the world again. The house of life greets you with the same scent of dry ink and river clay, but now you know its patterns better than your own breath. You take your seat on the mat closest to the entry scroll vault and begin your day with a familiar ritual, opening the reed box, inspecting the pigments, breathing once for stillness before the ink touches the page. But before your reed pen dips into the ink pot, a voice speaks, the high scribe. He approaches slowly, his robe trailing a faint trace of crushed thyme and candle soot. He doesn't carry a scroll today, only a small clay tablet, rough and old. This was found in the southern vault, he says softly, kneeling beside you. Unmarked, forgotten, no signature, but the hand. The hand is yours. You take it gently. The tablet is cracked, etched faintly with symbols of gratitude, an offering to Thoth, god of wisdom. You remember it now. You carved it on your 4th week in the granary, long before you understood what you were asking. You didn't expect it to survive. The high scribe touches your shoulder, then stands. We remember what matters, he says, even if it forgets us first. You hold the tablet in your lap long after he leaves. The weight is small, but it anchors something in your chest that had been drifting for a long time. That evening, a new scroll arrives, unusually large, tightly wrapped in painted linen. When unrolled, it reveals an old story, the tale of the shipwrecked sailor, a classic told for generations. You're asked to create a performance copy for a temple school, written not just to preserve but to teach. It's your first time writing a scroll that will be read aloud, meant to move the mouth, not just the hand. You take your time with it. You sing the words softly as you copy them, adjusting the spacing for breath. You remember the pauses your father used to take when reading to you at night. How he'd let silence settle like dust between phrases so you could feel the words land. When the scroll is done, you seal it with a small symbol in the corner, a seated scribe with open eyes. Not your official mark, just a quiet signature between you and the story. That week, the temple hosts a reading. You attend in the back, quiet, unseen. A child barely taller than the scroll reads your copy aloud. She stumbles once, then again. Then she finds the rhythm. Her voice grows steady, strong. The other children laugh and gasp at all the right moments. You don't smile. You beam without moving your face. Later that night, you walk home past the shrine to Tolrit. You pause. The pebble you once left, the one painted with ochre and the word remembered, has been moved. A new stone sits in its place. It reads only, written in breath. You kneel and touch the stone gently, as if it might wake. Then you rise. When you arrive home, your mother is sewing by the fire. She's making a new tunic, one finer than you've ever owned. She doesn't say who it's for. She doesn't need to. You sit beside her, sharing the quiet like warm bread. Before sleep, you open your scroll pouch. Inside now are 5 things. Your reed pens, the stitched cloth with your birth name, the 2 lotus seeds, and the clay shard from the southern vault. You add a 6th, a fresh strip of papyrus, blank, not because you don't know what to write yet, but because now, for the first time, you're the one who gets to choose the story. The next day begins like any other, sunlight yawning over the mudbrick walls, roosters in the distance crowing with stubborn pride, the scent of baked clay warming in the courtyard air. You walk to the house of life with your satchel full, your steps slow, your breathing steady. But the air today feels different, lighter, like something has shifted in the space around you. Or maybe it's in you. When you arrive, a familiar face greets you. The priestess who once led you into the temple library now stands waiting beneath the papyrus canopy, her robe the color of dove's feathers, her eyes lined in charcoal. She gestures, and you follow without words. She leads you not to the scroll halls, but past them, deeper through a narrow corridor you've never seen open. The air cools, the walls close in, it smells of old incense and still water. You pass a room where carved statues sit in rose gods with animal heads and almond eyes that seem to follow the flicker of torchlight. You do not speak. You do not breathe too loudly. You reach a chamber lit by skylight. In the center, a scroll rests on a black stone table, already unrolled. It is not just any scroll. It is your work, your book of breaths. The high scribe steps from the shadows. He wears a sash, today a rare honor, embroidered with symbols of Ra, of Mat, of the balance. He nods once, solemnly. This, he says, will be entombed beside the priestess this evening, a noble woman who once ruled 3 provinces and who died with no child to carry her name. But your hand will carry her now, your symbols, your breath. He lifts a clay jar and pours a small circle of water around the scroll, a purification rite. Then he speaks one final word, witness. You step forward and place your hand beside the scroll. You press your palm to the table, leaving the faintest trace of ink behind, unseen to most, but known to the gods. Your mark is there now, etched not in gold or granite, but in gesture, in presence, in humility. You leave the room in silence. That night you do not return to the house of life. You return to the river. You walk along its edge, barefoot. The silt squishes between your toes, warm and soft, like memory. You pass fishermen who do not look up. You pass children chasing frogs between reeds. You pass a woman washing linen, humming the same lullaby your mother once sang on stormy nights. At the river bend, you find the fig tree where your father was buried. The roots have thickened now. The bark glows in the fading light. You sit beside it, scroll pouch in your lap. You unroll the blank strip of papyrus, the one you tucked away weeks ago, and you begin to write, not for the temple, not for the dead, not for the gods, but for you. You write the story of your first mistake, your first fear, your first kindness. You write the smell of the granary's dust, the sound of sandal soles on wet stone, the feel of the clay bead in your palm, the dream of the field, the girl with the water cup, the boy with the cracked reed. You write it all. And when the stars begin to blink overhead, you stop. You roll the scroll carefully, tie it with a simple string, and bury it in the earth beside the fig tree. No seal, no fanfare, just ink and dirt and silence. That night you return home. Your mother is asleep. You sit beside her, and for a while you simply listen to her breathing. The same rhythm that once kept you steady through the worst of it. The same breath you used to match when you were small, curled on a mat at her side. And before you sleep, you whisper into the dark, "I am still here." And this time the world whispers back, "So am I."